Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Guntai ki, Sisi Radhavana Kanta ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. Glories to the Assembly Lord. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devin Sarasating Vyasam Tatom Jayomudiriye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should first offer our respectful obeisances to the Supreme Personality of God, Lord Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the Supremaster human being, Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, to Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and to Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual master and founder Acharya. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Shrimakti Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvashesha Sunnavari Vaskachari Satadine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we're reading from Canto 3, Chapter 1, and it's text 38, but I'm going to read 39 and then 40 as a purport. So 38 has a small purport. So is that 38? Is that on the board?
Yes.
Okay. So would you lead the Sanskrit for me, Prabhu?
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Kaschid Yashoda Ratha Yutha Anam.
Whoa. Oh, I see. Okay. Gandiva
Danvo Paratarir Aste.
Gandiva Danvo Paratarir Aste.
Alakshito Yachara Kuta Gudo.
Alakshito Yachara Kuta Gudo.
Maya Kirato Girishastutosha.
Maya Kirato Girishastutosha.
Kaschit Yashoda Ratayutapanam.
Kaschit Yasoda Ratayutupanam.
Gandiva Danvo Paratarirashte.
Gandiva Danvo Paratarirashte.
Alakshito Yachara Kudo.
Alakshito Yachara Kuta Gudo.
Maya Kirato Girishastutosha.
Maya Kirato Girasastutosha.
Kaschit Yashoda Ratayutapanam.
Kaschit Yasoda
Gandiva Danvo Paratarirashte. Alakshito Yachara Kuta Gudo. Maya Kirato Girishastutosha.
Kaschit Yasoda Ratayutapanam. Gandiva no Paratarirashte. Gandiva Paratarirashte. Alakshito Yachara Kuta Gudo. Maya Karita Girasastutosa. Someone? Kaschit Yasoda Ratayutapanam. Kaschit Yasoda Ratayutapanam.
Kandeva Davapanta Asti. Alakshitaya Shara Kuta Gohadindo. Maya Kata Krisastusa.
Kaschid Yashoda Rataya Tatpanam. Rakshishita Yakshara Kutaputo
Maya Kirato Girasastutosha. So the word for word is Kaschet, whether. Yasada, famous. Urata Yutapanam, amongst the great chariot warriors. Gandiva, Danva, Uparata, Ari, one who has vanquished the enemies. Ashte, doing well. Alakshita, without being identified. Yat, whose? Sarakuta Guda. Sarakuta Guda. Sarakuta Gada. Or Guda. It's being covered by arrows. Maya Kirata. False hunter. Girisa, Lord Shiva. Tutosha was satisfied. So the translation, I'll read it then and we can repeat it. Please tell me whether Arjuna, whose bow bears the name Gandiva, and who is always famous amongst the chariot warriors for vanquishing his enemies, is doing well. He once satisfied Lord Shiva by covering him with arrows when Shiva came as an unidentified false hunter. Please repeat. Please tell me whether Arjuna, whose bow bears the name Gandiva, and who is always famous amongst the chariot warriors for vanquishing his enemies, is doing well. He once satisfied Lord Shiva by covering him with arrows. When Shiva came as an enemy, when Shiva came as an unidentified false hunter. Shiva came as an unidentified false hunter. So the purport by Srila Prabhupada is Lord Shiva tested Arjuna's strength by picking a quarrel with him over a hunted boar. We could use that now. Here. He confronted Arjuna in the false dress of a hunter, and Arjuna covered him with arrows until Lord Shiva was satisfied with Arjuna's fighting. He offered Arjuna the Pashupati weapon and blessed him. Here, Vidura inquired about the great warrior's well-being. I'll read a couple more. Did I read the right one? Was I supposed to read 38? Yeah. Okay, 38. Here's 39. What? Oh, she told me it was 40. Oh, so I'm sorry. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Yanavutasvit tanayau kritaya pathir vritau pakshmabir akshini shinva remata udhaya mridheshva ritam karat suparna eva varish vaktrat. Translation. Are the twin brothers who are protected by their brothers doing well, just as the eye is always protected by the eyelid? They are protected by the sons of Pritha, and that is Kandi, who snatched back his rightful kingdom from the hands of their enemy Duryodhana, just as Garuda snatched nectar from the mouth of Indra, the thunderbolt carrier. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Indra, the king of heaven, carries a thunderbolt in his hand and is very strong, yet Garuda, the carrier of Lord Vishnu, was able to snatch nectar from his mouth. Similarly, Duryodhana was as strong as the king of heaven, and still the sons of Pritha, the Pandavas, were able to snatch away their kingdom from Duryodhana. Both Garuda and the Parthas are pet devotees of the Lord, and thus it is possible for for them to face such strong enemies. Vidura's inquiry was about the youngest brothers of the Pandavas, namely Nakula and Sahadev. These twin brothers were sons of Mandri, the stepmother of the other Pandavas. But although they were stepbrothers, because Kunti took charge of them after the departure of Mandri with her husband Maharaj Pandu, Nakula and Sahadev, were as good as the other three Pandavas. Yudhisthira, Bhima, and Arjuna. The 5 brothers were known in the world as regular brothers. The three elder Pandavas took care of the younger brothers, just as the eyelid takes care of the eye. Vidura was anxious to know whether, after winning back their own kingdom from the hands of Duryodhana, the younger brothers were still living happily under the care of the elder brothers. So actually there's no reason. I had actually thought I was doing 40, but there's no reason I couldn't just stop here. So, Om Gyanti Marandasya Gilanjana Salakaya Chaksur Umanitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, what we have here is, this is at a time when, like now, in our very advanced civilization, society, our technology, we have so many ways of communicating with smartphones, and we have social media, Facebook, and WhatsApp. Would that help in this case? If you want to know where somebody was, WhatsApp or WhatsApp or something, and all these different Facebook, and people have GPS. Here's Vidura wandering around all the holy places in India for like 30, 35 years. With he didn't have any, first of all, when he left the palace, you have to understand, Vidura was extremely wealthy. When his elder brother Pandu, after he married and spent some time with his 2 wives in the forest retreat, he asked his uncle, grandfather Bhishma, I think, since the death of Santanu and his 2 sons, that there are many kings throughout the world that have become sort of antagonistic and puffed up with their position, and it's time to set things right. So he decides to go out and put things in order around the world, and he's extremely successful. And after about, months or a year, he comes back with a tremendous amount of wealth. Gold, valuable gems, and it says in the purport, or somewhere I was reading, that he came back with millions of cows and horses. Recently, on somebody's Facebook page, I saw, I don't know if this was some kind of trick photography or something, but it didn't look like it. But there was this herd of cows in India, and it just kept coming. It was miles long, and it just kept coming. Has anyone ever seen this one? You have? They just kept coming and coming. There was no end. And we know from the Krishna book stories, King Nriga, he was giving in charity thousands of cows, sometimes millions of cows, every day. So there was no, when they talk about overpopulation, this is kind of a silly proposal. When you read about the wealth and opulence of the Vedic civilization, but it may not have had, television or internet, but they had mystic yogis who had spiritual televisions. They had, and some of them had mystic powers. They didn't eat off of plastic plates. They had gold plates. They had a much, their homes were all first class. There was no poverty. There were different gradations, depending on your varna, but everyone was provided for. There was no unemployment. And so there was, but unfortunately, the West, especially the British, but the Muslims, they also have contributed to this. Everyone has. The envy of the knowledge of the Vedas and the wealth of India is so overwhelming that they just call it mythology. And the definition of myth means something that's untrue. It's a fantasy. These things are not fantasies. The bridge that Lord Ramachandra built out of stones from the satellite. National Geographic showed this a few years ago, and you can Google this on the internet. You can see the stones under the water from the tip of India going over to Sri Lanka. These things happened. Dwarka, they found the city of Dwarka underwater. And at one point the archaeologists started to do underwater research, and then for some reason, the government shut it down. And it's very suspicious to me. I don't know why that they did that. Maybe there's a tremendous amount of wealth or something. It would create controversies, but they shut it down. And so, on and on we can go. And we know that because we're receiving the knowledge from a chain of perfect masters, sages who are virtuous and true. Not by speculative knowledge. This is actually all coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So, Pandu, after he returned from this great, and he distributed that wealth and shared with his brothers, Dhritarashtra and Vidura. Vidura was extremely wealthy. And so what happens is, we've already discussed it several times, that he is telling his older brother Dhritarashtra that your son is a cancer on our family. He has tried to kill our brother's sons. He's tried to poison them. He sent them into a house that was made of this very flammable material. He has tried to disrobe their wife in front of everyone. He's offense personified. And Duryodhana's, of course, listening to this, but this is like, if I came in and mentioned it, your son is going around stealing cars, killing innocent animals. He's completely reckless. You can't put up with this, but he's so attached to him. He wants him to be the emperor, and not the rightful heir, who is Yudhisthira, who is the son of Dharma. He's like religion personified. He wouldn't even lie when Krishna asked him to lie. So, and we know why those sons of Pandu are not actually Pandu's sons. This is a way for when the husband, for some reason or other, cannot give heirs to his family. The wife can either from one of the brothers or from rishis, and then, which is how they were all born. They were all born by Vyasadeva impregnating the wives and the one maid or maiden mistress, sort of a handmaiden, so to speak, a Sudra, because their fathers weren't capable or they had passed away. I can't remember the details. But in any case, and Pandu had been cursed. He could not conceive because he innocently, accidentally, while hunting, killed 2 deers and didn't realize, while they were engaged in intercourse, and he didn't realize that they were 2 rishis, they were 2 sages. And the reason they were doing this is because they had no place. They didn't have any living dwelling, so they couldn't engage in their relations in public, but they could do it as deers. And so the sage says, I'm going to have to curse you now. And he realizes Pandu is really, really sorry and really didn't understand. But the offense, he had the right to be hunting, he had the right to kill those deers, but he didn't have a right to kill them while engaged in relations like that. You can't hunt a species of animal while engaged with its spouse. So, therefore, he could not conceive. If he did, he would die in that act. So, and Kunti, Kunti had this blessing. She wouldn't first. She had never told him, and he's telling her, "I want you to conceive. We need heirs." Before, and she's saying, "No, I can't do this. I won't. You're my Lord. I don't want to be with some beast. I don't want anyone." And then we need heirs before I go. And so, and at this point, he's not planning on doing anything. He's planning on just living as in a renounced way in an ashram in the forest. But she then reveals to him that she has this blessing that she can call any one of the devas, and she asks him, and he says, "This is great." And after, she says, "Well, if you insist, which one would you like me to call?" And he says, "First of all, I would like you to call the most virtuous of the demigods, and that would be Yamash." So he comes in a chariot, beautiful chariot, and he asks her, "How can I serve you?" And she explains the situation, and so Yudhishthira is born. Then they decide a little bit later on, we need someone with strength. Not just the strength of truth and religion, but we need bodily, physical strength. So he decides on Vayu. And Vayu comes in this very mystical way. And then he conceives her by mantra. It says that Yudhishthira conceived with her by his spiritual body. At least that's what I read recently. The problem with reading the Mahabharata, there's so many versions, you never know exactly what's what. But he said that Vayu conceived by mantra, and so Bhima was born. And there's an interesting little story that I heard just recently, that when Bhima was young, he was on her lap, and something happened. She heard some lion or something roaring, or somebody was coming threatening, and she was startled, and he fell off her lap and fell down the cliff. And she's, "Oh my God, oh Krishna, 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 what have I done?" And so Pandu goes down to the bottom, and Bhima's laying there as an infant, and he smashed all the rocks below. That's how strong he is. He's just an infant. So then they decide also, for other reasons, that we need someone who's as powerful as the Supreme Lord, and Indra is the supreme deity of the demigods, the king of heaven. So Arjuna is conceived. So, and then later on, the Madri is given the chance, and to the Nahadev and Sakul and Nahadev were conceived from the Ashwini Kumars, the twins. And so these stories are all amazing. It sounds really, but they're all true. These are historical facts. So, the real point of this is that Vidura's now been thrown out of this palace with all this wealth that his older brothers has provided. And Dhritarashtra is living on that wealth, and so are his 100 sons, including Duryodhana. They're all living off the wealth that Pandu produced. Of course, they've been doing some, things themselves, but it all is based on that. And Vidura is saying, "Look, your son is out of control. You've got to stop this." And then Duryodhana says, "You have to get out." And he says, "Fine, I leave." And he leaves with just his breath. Leaves his bow, everything, his wealth, everything behind. and he's traveling to all the pilgrimages. And just imagine, all of a sudden, you've been walking around for 30, 35 years, and you're not in touch with anyone, you don't know anything about your family, and then you just coincidentally, you're walking on the bank of the Jamuna, and who comes along but Uddhava, a very close friend of Krishna, who he hasn't seen in decades, and this is obviously, all by the arrangement of the Supreme Lord. I mean, it's just like the first time many of us first saw devotees or came in contact with devotees. It was miraculous. There was something, when you think back on it, how did that happen? If I hadn't have turned down there, I wouldn't have seen them, I would have gone on. There's so many stories about how people, become devotees, or, like the story that Bhushaya tells about after Prabhu left the planet, he had some problems and he joined the Navy. And then he was having some marital problems, he was very depressed, he was getting divorced, and he had left the movement, forgotten everything. And then this therapist he was seeing said, maybe you should take up some other hobbies and go out and meet other people. So for some reason he was taking some kind of a course, and he had to go to the library. So he had to do some research, and he's looking up for this one author, and then he sees it's B's, and he sees Bhaktivedanta Swami, and he sees, I think it was the TLC. He sees 4 of Prabhupada's books, just by coincidence. He immediately grabbed them, went back, and he remembered. He woke up. All of a sudden, he came back. So there's so many stories where people, how they became devotees, or how when they fell away. The story of a very famous book distributor, and when he used to distribute books, big books, he used to autograph the book. And so he had some spiritual difficulties, sort of the dark night of the soul, and he was hitchhiking one day, and someone stopped and picked him up, and because of this devotee's personality, they get into a philosophical discussion, and the topic of the Bhagavad Gita comes around. So the person who picked him up says, well, open up that glove compartment. I'm going to show you something. And it's a Bhagavad Gita. It's one of Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, as it is. He opens it up, and there's his signature. Sold by so-and-so. He had sold this person this book. It had come back around. And it's like you can't get away. Once you're in, you can't get out. It's like the mob, There's no way. You can't get out. So, I know a lot of stories like that, but I'm not going to get too much on the point. So so immediately, and this whole time he's just thinking about Krishna and the glories of Krishna and the pastime of Krishna. And so he doesn't talk just any discussion. Immediately, although you may say, well, he's asking about family members. Like, that seems kind of, he's renounced, why is he asking about, but these aren't just any family members. These are the sons of Krishna. These are people who are intimately connected with Krishna. And at first he asked about Krishna and Balaram, and he wants to know their well-being and how they're doing. And an interesting thing, now maybe some of you have known this, but I'll explain to you just how intimate Arjuna and Kunti are. There's a letter. I got this by way of Bhakti Kacha. She was doing research in the letters, and she found this one letter that Prabhupada wrote in 1968. Here they are. And I don't even know how to explain this. But before the paragraph before that, I copied out. And so this was written on the 12th of December, or the 21st of December, 1968. And the first paragraph says, you have asked how Krishna is with the spirit soul in the spiritual world, and the answer is that Krishna is the heart of the spirit soul, or the spiritual body. Like we have Paramatma in our heart, in this engagement that we're in. The soul and the Paramatma is traveling with us everywhere we go, witnessing everything. So, but in the spiritual world, we're not in a material body. We are who we are, our spiritual body, and the heart of the living entity is Krishna. Now, I don't know if that means in a poetic way, or really that Krishna is there in his heart, your heart. And I also sort of remember Prabhupada saying that for the pure devotee, it's not the four-arm form of Krishna, it's Govinda, is in his heart. Or whatever particular relationship or rasa that particular devotee is in. So he says, so Krishna is never apart from us. Either he remains in the heart of the material body, or he remains in the heart of the spiritual body. This is Krishna's causeless mercy to all his beloved children, or living entities. Now, she had asked a question about Kunti and Arjuna, and if they're in Krishna Loka. Now, obviously, they're going to be in Dwarka or Mathura, and there's a Dwarka and Mathura in the spiritual world. But I'm going to close the curtains. Jai Kornitai, Jai Shri Radha Radha Kanta Ki Jai.
I have to take pictures for their pose.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
So this is Prabhupada's answer. Is Arjuna always the same in his appearances with Krishna, or is a new soul taking his body each time? Yes, there is a difference. Therefore, he forgets his past activities, just like we forget ourselves while dreaming, because our subtle body acts at that time differently from the gross body. Similarly, by changing this body or transmigrating from one body to another, we forget all activities. Here it is. So he says, to answer your second question, you should know that Arjuna and Kunti Devi are not in Krishna Loka. They are eternally associated with Krishna only in the material world. Just like Krishna is always in the spiritual world, so similarly, he always in the material world. So similarly, he is always in the material world, and his pastimes are going on there also. In the material world, Krishna also has eternal associates, such as Arjuna and Kunti Devi. There is a difference between the body and soul of Arjuna and Kunti Devi. But although Arjuna is with Krishna in innumerable different material universes at one time, still there is only one spirit soul who is Arjuna. This spirit soul expands into different bodies, and thus you can understand that there are also incarnations of devotees as well as incarnations of Krishna. This is the power of the spirit soul, that it is unlimited. Such conception cannot be understood while one is still in the conditioned state. And that was a letter to Saradiya. She's a very lovely early disciple of Srila Prabhupada. She was married to Vaikuntha now. Prabhupada gave them his apartment to live in when they got married in New York. So he's saying that Kunti Devi and Arjuna are following Krishna throughout all the universes, perpetually. And at the same time, my understanding is that Arjuna is, I believe he's Ramananda Roy in Chaitanya's pastimes. And also, Arjuna is Nara in Nara-Narayan. Jai Shri Radha. And Nara-Narayan is in the pastime where the Brahmin, I believe it's in Dwarka or Mathura, he's very upset with the king, maybe it was Surasena, and he's complaining because his sons keep dying before he does. And in the Vedic culture, the king is responsible. A son is not supposed to die before the father. That is the responsibility of the king. That means the king is doing something improper. This is in the Krishna book. Arjuna overhears this Brahmin accusing the king of being not qualified to be the king. That you cannot protect your citizens. My sons are dying before me. This is irreligious. And so Arjuna says, he's outraged by it, and he says, I will protect it. And because it was an attack on that whole family. And the Brahmin doesn't believe him. Who are you? Why do you think Krishna's here? They're still leaving. So Arjuna says he's going to take care of it. So again, the wife becomes pregnant. Another son comes, and that son dies also. Actually, just disappears. So Arjuna he's beside himself because he's done everything to protect this, everything right. So Krishna says, "Look, let's go." Well, they start going all over the universe, to all the lower planetary systems, the higher planetary systems. Then they go off into beyond this universe, and they finally end up at the place of Mahavishnu. And there they are. And Mahavishnu says, I have been taking the boys because I knew that you too are the incarnation of Narayan Rishi. And I wanted to get your darshan because it's not often that you come in this form. And I wanted to get your darshan while you're here on this planet. So it was all being done by Vishnu, and they were able to bring back the sons, and everybody's happy. But so this has always bewildered me that, what does it mean that Arjuna is Narayan Rishi? I mean, Krishna is Narayan and Arjuna is Nara. And so here it's explained that he has an eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he takes on various roles and pastimes with Krishna to perform these, different pastimes for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the thing is that the only thing I can say about this is, in a sense, it's like Narada Muni. How do you explain Narada Muni? What is his rasa? He's Narada Muni. So it's unlimited. Krishna consciousness and becoming completely liberated, there's no end to the possibilities. We have a very static view of like in the West, Christianity, if you're good, you go to heaven. And we don't even know what that means. But what happens there? We hear beautiful harp music and everybody's smiling or something. But we don't know what to do. Here we have all this information about the different types of relationship you can have with Krishna and what you can do. But then there's all these other things. The soul isn't limited. If Krishna wants that soul to be engaged in every universe with him to perform these pastimes, you join his roadshow. You're constantly engaged in these heroic battles, watching Krishna perform these amazing pastimes. So, and they're done to help us to become more attracted to the Supreme Lord and to the spiritual world, because we've forgotten Krishna in this material world. We are in a sort of, almost like we're not, I wouldn't say dead, but we're definitely in deep sleep. And we identify with what we're not. The difference between a condition or the jivatma being able to be in various places at the same time with Krishna is that they're not fully conscious of everything. Krishna is fully conscious of everyone and everything that is going on in his creation. The jivatma is only conscious of what he needs to know to serve in that particular pastime. But this is such an amazing opportunity. This is such an amazing process. The possibilities of what goes on after this life. Okay, maybe you make a mistake, maybe you have to take another human birth, but the point is eventually everything we've done is permanent. Like if I do pious activities, I dig a well, I plant some fruit trees, I get some benefits, I go to the heavenly planets, I use up those benefits and I fall back down again. But what I do in Krishna consciousness is a permanent asset. It is never lost, no matter what stupid thing you do. You have to rectify it, but you have that in your bank account, your spiritual bank account, and eventually you enter into a realm of existence that we can't even begin to imagine. The scriptures give us a hint of it. But you're always experiencing complete bliss, complete knowledge. There's no anxiety. There's no fear. There's no want. You're totally sad, and it's always increasing. And the beauty and the colors that you see are... I'm watching Mangal Artik in Mayapur every morning on Mayapur TV, and their darshan, when they're... The artistry, the beauty of their deity worship. This is spectacular. But what they're doing there with those deities, they have so much more facility. The flowers and the outfits that all embroidered, the silk embroidery, it is so beautiful. This is the culture of India that the British tried to destroy. And then the Indian culture became covered, and even the civilization, the people of India, they were embarrassed by it themselves, and they wanted to be like Westerners. And that's why Prabhupada came to the West, to make us devotees, to bring us, because we aren't happy. In the West, we're not happy with this lifestyle. That's why you have crime, that's why you have, it's not equitable. Not everybody, one of the things I often hear from people who first come to India, they're very surprised that there's somebody who will come up to them and say, can you spare a dime? What do you mean? You're asking me for money? You're from India. You're from America. I'm from India. I'm from the poor country. You're rich. I've actually spoken to young men in India, once in Bombay at Juhu Beach, and once right outside the Calcutta Temple. And they had been taught to these Christian missionaries. And they thought that everyone in America was wealthy, and that there was no crime here. The way they described America, it sounded like it was Vaikuntha, or heaven. And when I would say to them, no, there really is crime in America. People steal from each other. People kill each other. There's all kinds of crime. And there are people that are in want, in need. There's poverty. No, don't say that. It was like committing some kind of blasphemy. I'm serious. I'm very serious. So Prabhupada wanted to save. And Lord Chaitanya said all those people born in Bharatvarsha, of course Bharatvarsha is in the world, but in this subcontinent of India, it is their responsibility to take to Lord Chaitanya's movement and spread this knowledge, spread this spiritual wealth. I read that article from the first Back to Godhead magazine in 1944, and all the leaders around the world were saying, we got to stop these wars. Every 20 years we're having these wars. We need a spiritual renaissance. And one of these individuals from Britain said, we need to tap the resources of India, because we all know that India is the treasure house of spiritual knowledge. They actually were saying like that. So, we're all very fortunate that Prabhupada came here, and this movement is great. And right now, I've been in America with this the best of times and the worst of times. Like say the 1950s was kind of, there was a lot of problems. But this, right now, what we're facing in America, this is... and we're on the verge of who knows what. This farm is an extremely important little beachhead in this war against the material energy. Not that I'm saying war in the sense of guns, but in the sense of culturally. The real wealth is not in paper money and plastic plates and automobiles and gadgets. The real wealth is in land grains, fruits, rice, and food and shelter. This is having milk, cows, ghee, all the things that the cows can produce for us. That's real wealth. And the real wealth is having knowledge of the self and the Supreme Self and how to reunite with Him. And Vidura's little journey, he's showing us that even, yes, you may be renounced, but you're still interested in your family as long as it's connected to Krishna. Everything has to be connected to Krishna. Anyway, I've rambled. Anything anyone like to say or ask? Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
I did want to say something, but we have the time.
Okay, yeah, sure. Actually, can I just read one of these verses from Mother Kunti? It's number 4 and 5. I just read the English translation. Let me therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto the Lord, who has become the son of Vasudeva, the pleasure of Devaki, the boy of Nanda, and the other cowherd men in Vrindavan, and the enlivener of the cows and senses. And then number 5 is, my respectful obeisances are unto you, O Lord, whose abdomen is marked with a depression like a lotus flower, who are always decorated with garlands of lotus flowers, whose glance is as cool as the lotus, and whose feet are engraved with lotuses. Srimad Bhagavatam 1:8-22. Prabhu took all of her prayers from the first canto and put this book together. Very nice read. What were you going to say, Mother?
Oh, it's not very important, but you were talking about how Krishna is so kind, Prabhupada's kind, boys come miraculously. I was thinking in a video, I don't remember names, but there was these two Matajis and they were looking for spiritual life.
Oh, yeah.
And then
France.
all of a sudden they find themselves in, I think it was Paris, France.
Right.
And they're having somebody chasing after them.
Right.
And then they were asking how